The automated shutters of the room's windows open, flooding the up-to-now dark and still room with a bright sunlight. It is a rather small room, outfitted with a single bed, a desk and 2 closets. On the desk there are a personal terminal, an envelope, various document folders, and a plethora of electronic components scattered about. Along with the shutters opening, the room's speakers started playing the gentle alarm sound, as if they were trying to kiss someone awake. Frederick stirs in his bed, groaning after being woken from his sleep, the warm, cushy sheets beckoning him to stay in bed. He pauses for a moment, considering staying in bed, until he remembers something. Knowing what today has in store for him, he stretches his shoulders and gets up out of bed defiant. Okay, you can turn it off now. I'm awake, alright. A soft digital beep is heard, and a monotonous, male synthetic voice answers. As you wish. Good morning, Frederick. Do you want something to help with your sleepiness? Frederick scratches the back of his head, still not fully awake. No, I don't think I want coffee today. I'm already jittery enough as is, but you can tell me today's forecast. Another affirmative beep. Of course. Today is March 11th. It is 7 o'clock in the morning, with temperatures of 21 Celsius average. The forecast for this morning is overcast but dry, though the cloud cover should clear up until noon. You have one reminder for today set on your personal calendar. Do you wish me to read it out for you? Listening to the voice and looking out of the window, he winces slightly at the light assailing his still darkness-adjusted eyes. The view is the same boring scenery as it has been for the past 4 years. A suburban neighbourhood of various smaller houses, apartment buildings, and a few scattered small-scale businesses. But he very well knew what that reminder on his calendar was for. Just actually getting some sleep, despite his anxiousness, was a miracle in and of itself last night. He then turns to the empty room. Don't need you to. I got it up here, as he points to his head. Another beep. Of course. The room stays silent for a few minutes. Alright, I'm going to take a shower and get ready for the day. Could you check if there are any delays for my train while I'm showering? The room beeps again, confirming his request. Having informed his assistant, he grabs the formal-looking clothes he prepared last evening and makes his way to the bathroom. During the shower, the excitement starts to build up inside of him. This could very well be the chance he had hoped for. A chance to leave this place and to actually do something substantial. But that all depends on whether or not he can actually convince them to hire him. Just be yourself, huh? What kind of advice is that? After getting out of the shower, he dries himself off and puts on his clothes. Seeing himself in the mirror with his new button-down shirt does give him at least some confidence. This should be adequate. Re-entering his room, he is greeted by a short series of sounds. Someone got something to say, it seems. The disembodied voice tells him, I have checked the schedule of your train and searched through the notification channels of the railway. Nothing unusual came up. There shouldn't be any delays so far. Okay, good to know. I'll be leaving now, so take care of my room. Probably back around noon. Frederick walks over to his desk and looks into his bag, just to make sure he actually didn't forget anything. Pen? Check. Papers? Check. Wallet? Check. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Grabbing the bag with his left hand, he lifts up a circlet of sorts with his right and puts it around his left wrist. As soon as he touches it, the current time gets projected onto his forearm. 07:13. Locking the door after he leaves his room, he could already hear a few voices involved in a conversation, coming from the kitchen. As he enters the room, another young man and woman look towards him, seemingly having been in conversation before he entered. Oh, look who it is! You got a date or something? Liza exclaims with a mischievous grin. Nico sighs and looks over towards Frederick. Ignore him. Lars is just trying to tease you, but what's that outfit for? Oh, Lars didn't tell you? Frederick asks her while walking over towards the fridge. No, he didn't, Nico explains with a slightly suspicious look. Hey, maybe I forgot, okay? Sorry, but it's not something bad, so don't worry. Lars defends himself, over-dramatically gesturing, putting on an obvious performance. Apparently recalling something, he immediately drops the act and looks at Frederick. Oh, right, isn't today your job interview, Fred? He asks with an overly curious expression. Frederick takes a cup of yogurt out of the fridge, grabbing a spoon on his way back towards the already energetic pair, finally sitting down at the small table facing both of them. Oh, you got a job interview. Where? Is it that one you talked about a few weeks ago? Nico inquires excitedly. Yeah, that one. I applied to Helios as an engineer and they actually invited me for a job interview last week. Can you believe it? Frederick answers, grinning from ear to ear. Nico's eyes widen a bit after hearing his answer. Everyone knows Helios. They were the first to secure mining rights for helium-3 on the moon, back in the early 2030s. Due to the successful implementation of fusion generators in the major industrial nations back then, an insatiable demand for helium-3 was created, and Helios capitalized on that. Due to the higher efficiency of a deuterium/helium-3 fusion, the benefits were obvious, and the market prices for it started out at ridiculous heights. Adjusted for inflation, around $2 billion per metric ton of helium-3. They became a major international player in no time. "Your big day, huh? Are you nervous?" Lars inquires, with a devious look on his face. Nico slaps Lars playfully on his shoulder. "Stop it, will you? I'm trying to be serious here," and turns to Frederick. "So when is it? You know that their nearest branch is over in New Vienna." Frederick, unfazed by Lars' shenanigans, takes a spoonful of yogurt and explains. "Yeah, at 8:30 in the Helios headquarters, over in downtown MV. I'll be lying to you if I said I wasn't nervous about it." He chuckles to himself lightly, feeling butterflies in his stomach. Now, with an almost conciliatory expression, Lars looks directly to Frederick. Don't sweat it. Aren't you, like, the best in your whole group? What could go wrong?" Frederick answers Lars. "I'm not the best in my group, but my grades are high, I get." Nico interrupts him. "You are great at what you're doing, so don't play modest. Also, if you are not convinced that you're good, how do you want to convince the interviewers?" she scolds him. Lars perks up, previously having expected his crisp bread. "Yeah, I'm not good at all that science and engineering stuff, but I'm good at arts. But even I can see that you got talent, man. All those quirky things you build out of old electronics, the fact that you hacked your assistant because you didn't like the way it spoke. Didn't really understand that one, to be honest. Or that project you did last year, it even got some attention." He pauses for a moment and takes a bite. "You gotta have confidence, man, because you can back it up." Not knowing how to handle this situation, Frederick feels flustered. Well, it's just uncanny if an artificial intelligence talks exactly like a real person. Even Psy, for Christ's sake. I like it better the way it is now, not pretending to be a human. He defends himself, trying to stop them from further complimenting him. Nico gives him a stern look. "That's besides the point right now. We're just telling you that you've got this. You'll be fine. And if you give them that much passion later on in the interview, you will definitely leave a good impression." "Yeah, I know I should stop worrying too much, but that's just me. It always has been." He pauses. "Still, thank you guys. It means a lot to me. I know that I shouldn't have to worry, but as it seems my stupid brain decided to be irrational in one thing..." Frederick smiles sheepishly, not looking directly towards any of them, sighing quietly. An awkward silence fills the room. Quickly finishing his yogurt, he taps his mobile glass, the time being projected, again, 07:28. "Alright, guys, if I want to make it in time, I'll have to leave. Good talking to you." He grabs his sling bag and gets up from the table. "See you soon." "Go get him," Lars calls after him, as Frederick leaves the room. "I'll do my best," Frederick calls back, already down the hallway. With his mind already going through all the possible scenarios, he arrives at the train station. Good, there it is, Frederick thinks to himself, seeing his train waiting in the station. He walks towards a turnstile and holds his hologlass against a recessed backlit plate. The plate's white light changing to a light green hue after making a small beep. His focus still directed on the train, he walks over towards it, fighting his way through the crowd. He never liked big groups of people, but this time he doesn't really care that much. His mind is somewhere else right now. After entering the train, he takes a breather and sits down on the window seat, pulling out his headphones. Thank God it isn't as crowded inside the train. Looking around, he can see many different people of all ages, in various states of sleep deprivation and grogginess. I wonder if any of them are on their way to something important as well, he mutters to himself while putting on his headphones. Listening to the tunes and taking in his surroundings during the ride, his mind calms down a bit. Yeah, he got this. He worked hard just for this. There may be a lot riding on it, but he prepared accordingly. He'd never go into a difficult situation unprepared. And as the train leaves a suburban area, crossing a small bit of farmland, he is pulled out of his thoughts by the change in his surroundings. Observing the passing scenery, he contemplates what the person that's going to be interviewing him will be like, spending the rest of the ride holding on to this thought. Thankfully, the train ride is over quickly, and after getting off the car, he orients himself, looking towards the various directions depicting the different districts. Educational district, habitation districts 1 through 10, commercial district, industrial district. Come on, where is it? Ah, there. He walks towards an exit he has never taken before, directions reading business district. Making his way through towards his destination, he can feel the anxiousness rise again. All these new streets, buildings, people, he feels totally out of place. Even though just about everyone wears the same kind of clothes as him, business suits, button-down shirts, and sling bags, he still can't shake that feeling of not belonging there, almost expecting someone to suddenly show up and accuse him of trespassing. What is up with that feel to all those people around me? With that unshakable feeling in the back of his mind, he follows the directions given to him by his hologlass for a few minutes. As his navigation tells him that he arrived at his destination, he can clearly see why that is so. A massive skyscraper with the Helios brand logo above its entrance looms over him, making him feel as insignificant as any other monolithic building could. Approaching the massive glass doors, he checks the time. 8:10, right on time. As he enters the needlessly oversized lobby, he notices two things. 1. Apparently this building was designed just to make anyone entering it feel inadequate. 2. His gaze falls on the reception. Instead of a fellow human, he sees a robot manning it. Making his way over there, he is at least slightly pleased by the fact that the robot's design is clearly far from humanoid, having neither arms nor a face. After reading the reception, the elongated obelisk of a robot lights up in a soft orange, and a synthetic voice greets him. "Welcome to Helios, Mr. McLeroy. How may I assist you?" Taken aback by the fact that this random robot A knows his name, and B recognized him without any obvious cameras, Frederick feels uncomfortable. He doesn't like the implications of any of those two facts. Wary of the machine, but trying to appear calm, he asks the orange obelisk, "How did you—" The lights of the robot start pulsing slowly for a few moments, as if indicating that the machine is processing something. "Insufficient information given. Please elaborate further for a satisfactory answer." Frederick sighs and elaborates. "How do you know my name? I haven't introduced myself yet." The lights start pulsing again, this time for a lot shorter duration than before. "Your hologlass, sir. It contains your personal information. This unit accessed it for identification purposes and standard greeting procedures. May I assist you in something else?" Facepalming internally at his idiocy, he straightens up again. "Yes, I have an appointment today at 8:30. I need directions on where to go." This time, before the obelisk answers him, the lights start pulsing as usual, though for a fraction of a second they change their colour to a blue instead, but return to orange as if interrupted by something. "Your appointment with Mr. Morgan will take place in meeting room 7A. Please head towards any of the elevators in the back, as they will take you to your destination automatically. After you have arrived at the correct floor, a concierge will guide you to your destination. Please note that entering this building any further than the reception also adds as you entering into a non-disclosure agreement about anything you see, hear, read, or otherwise observe directly related to Helios or any of its business partners during your visit. Violating this agreement will have legal consequences, all according to our rules for visitors." Slightly overwhelmed and taken by surprise, Frederick answers with a cautious, "Okay, I think I got it." The robot's lights flicker for a second. "For further inquiries and questions, please refer to our Q&A to your right, as some traffic has accumulated behind you in the past moments. Have a pleasant day." Caught off guard, Frederick turns around and notices 3 people in business clothing waiting behind him. "Oh, excuse me, I'll take my leave." Clutching his sling bag, he hurries away from the counter and heads towards the elevators, his footsteps on the golden black marble floor echoing throughout the room. Not even 5 minutes have passed, and he has already made a fool of himself. Good job, idiot. Making his way to one of the 5 elevators, he tries to look for the call button, but can't find one. Suddenly, the doors to one of the elevators already open by themselves, as if somebody already foresaw him choosing this very elevator, and decided to send it on his way to him ahead of time. Slightly hesitant, he steps into the sleek, memorial, and wooden interior, and again, as if possessed by a ghost, the elevator's doors close by themselves, and the whole apparatus starts moving too. Which floor exactly? Frederick looks for some kind of display, but can't find anything that stands out from the immaculately built interior of the lift, plus a door of course. In general, everything about this building has an uncomfortable aura of unlimited budget to it, as if the owners were trying to tell anyone entering that nothing matches their level of authority. An oppressive feeling, really. As the elevator starts moving upwards, he gets a short amount of time to himself. All of this secrecy around where he is going, being kept in the dark, and that off-putting feeling of inadequacy really doesn't help with his anxiousness. Why not just tell people where to go, give directions, you know? Would it really hurt that much to know where you are going? You're going to be there anyway, so why not just tell them where it is? Contemplating why people decided on this way of treating visitors, he gets a bit lost in thought. And when its upwards rise starts decelerating, he is pulled back to the present. As the elevator finally comes to a halt, a digital note is heard, and the doors start opening again. On the other side, another obelisk robot awaits him already, emanating a constant blue glow this time. A synthetic but soft female voice greets him. "Hello, you have arrived at your desired floor. I shall guide you to Mr. Morgan. Please follow me." The robot starts moving down the hallway. Without responding to the weirdly shaped robot, Frederick starts walking behind it, observing the walls instead of engaging in conversation with the machine. And things to observe there are, indeed. Painted on gigantic canvases, there are masterfully painted artworks of exploded assembly drawings, blueprints, and abstract depictions of various industrial components, all in bright colours and intricate detail. Wow, they are beautiful, Frederick thinks out loud with a bit of awe. It's like speaking again, the robot responds. They were painted and gifted by the artist Johann Dreyfus, a close friend of the founder and CEO of our company. Because he liked them so much, our founder decided to display copies of them at every branch of his company. The whereabouts of the originals are confidential information. He is taken aback by the sight. It never crossed his mind to view simple mechanical components or mundane blueprints as something beautiful, something worthy of being an art piece, but he very much likes the idea of it. Only a few moments later, the robot stops moving. Its light speaking again briefly. You have arrived at meeting room 7A. Mr. Morgan awaits you already. Please enter. After giving Frederick the required information, it suddenly turns around on the spot and makes its way back down the hallway. Now standing alone before the imposing wooden doors, Frederick takes a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. He waits for a second, straightens his posture, and grabs the door handle. I got this. On the other side of the room, sitting on the opposite side of a relatively small table, a well-groomed man in his mid-40s waits for him with a pleasant smile. Noticing Frederick entering, the man gets up from his chair to greet him. Ah, welcome. Please take a seat. Frederick sits down on a pretty comfortable chair, setting his bag on the floor, still unsure about the situation. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Pleased to meet you, Frederick says, managing to hide his nervousness. The man quickly scans over Frederick, trying to get a gauge on him. How was your trip? I've been told that you live on the outskirts of town. Frederick replies, Oh, it was without any major incidents, sir. That's good to hear. We want you in top shape, after all. Also, let us drop the formalities. Please, call me Howard instead. I don't want a tense atmosphere when I get to meet new people. His demeanour is generally pleasant, but with a subtle, weird undertone to his voice. Not really knowing what to do with this, Frederick replies with an awkward, alright, you can call me Frederick, but I assume you already know my first name. He doesn't really want to call him that, though. Just dropping the formalities almost instantly doesn't really click with him. It'll play along for now. A tiny smirk gets visible on Mr. Morgan's otherwise impossible to read face. Splendid. So, first things first, tell me a bit about yourself, he says, with a bit of enthusiasm in his voice. Without spending too much time thinking about his answer, Frederick tells him, Alright, I am currently in my final semester of studying electrical engineering at... Mr. Morgan interrupts him. Listen, I want you to tell me about yourself. The boring stuff is already addressed in your CV. I want to know the interesting things that didn't get into it. If your history and grades didn't already fulfill our requirements, you wouldn't have been invited to a face-to-face conversation. Trust me. So please, no boring business talk, alright? Upon hearing this, Frederick is relieved. This is definitely a bit different from what he imagined, and again very unexpected. But he likes how this is going, at least on paper. They're already interested in him. Got it. In my free time I tinker around mostly with older tech from the early 21st century due to the low cost and high availability. Smartphones make up a majority of my resources. You can use their hardware for many things, actually. A few months ago. His mind drifts off to the conversation he had earlier this morning. Some months ago, I actually built a hologlass of sorts out of a later model smartphone. It originally was a challenge from a colleague of mine. He talked down to me because he thought that my dabbling in obsolete technology was useless, and I didn't achieve anything with it. So I talked back to him, said that I learned a lot of things from tinkering with them, things that we didn't get taught at uni. He didn't believe me, of course, so he dared me to make something actually useful out of them, presuming it is even possible. And so I did. It took me several weeks and a lot of my free time though, but it was a fully working, but rough, hologlass-esque prototype. I even managed to install the actual OS on it and download some applications. He didn't like it, of course, but he admitted defeat and apologised for mocking my work. But I expanded upon that and refined the whole thing. With a lot of time and work, I created a step-by-step guide on how to convert old smartphones into actual functioning hologlass devices, and it caught a bit of wind on the net, you could say. This... He holds up his left arm and pulls back his sleeve, revealing a bracelet of sorts on his wrist. He taps it once and it starts projecting the current time on the back of his arm, as usual. 0834. This is my final evolution of said project. An open source hologlass using recycled electronics, widely available to anyone, with a few bits of modern technology like graphite batteries sprinkled here and there. But you can even install different operating systems on it, enabling the users to have complete control over their device, not limited by the big manufacturer's choices. It took me about a year for the whole project, and I almost gave up many times, but due to the immense support I received, I continued with the project and finished it. It really is not something to boast about, I know. Repurposing already working hardware is not that big of an achievement, but that is the project I am most proud of. As he finishes, he pulls his left sleeve back down and rests both of his arms below the table, nervous about his interviewer's reaction. Seeing that Frederick has finished talking, Mr. Morgan gets out of his listening expression and goes back to a neutral smile. That is indeed something very interesting. I have seen many things, but that one was definitely something new. I'm impressed by your ingenuity. In the past few years, the amount of creative students was less than satisfactory. Only a few try to innovate or create unusual things. They are content with just replicating what their professors teach them. A shame, really. Not knowing how to handle the praise, Frederick scratches his right shoulder with a sheepish smile. Thank you. I didn't know that companies value those things. They never tell anything about that. Mr. Morgan then leans back a bit in his chair and gives Frederick an inquisitive look. Say, Frederick, why did you choose our company? With your skill set, you could go anywhere. Why us? Having prepared precisely for this question lots of times before, Frederick replies, I want to work for a company that I have genuine interest in, that I like working for. Everyone knows about Helios and what they do, so I luckily didn't have to investigate a lot. Plus, I hoped that I would get the opportunity to see many different places, with Helios being globally represented and all. Apparently pleased with this answer, Mr. Morgan makes a gesture with his right hand and looks at Frederick. Well, that is very good to hear. Of course, Helios is represented globally, but with you having expressed interest in seeing many different places, say, what would you think of an off-world position? Your skill set is exactly what we need for an upcoming project, but I sadly cannot share more with you, without your feedback at least. Completely flabbergasted, Frederick takes a moment to collect himself. Still not believing what he just heard. Did he really just say off-world? So, you would offer me a position off-world as my first assignment? Well, that certainly is a surprise. Depending on what it entails, I would be interested in the offer, but I will have to finish my academic studies first, of course. So, keeping that in mind, would I still be viable for the position? He tries to appear nonchalant about the whole situation, but clenching his right fist below the table, he keeps repeating in his head, say yes, say yes. Keeping his neutral demeanour, he answers quickly, well, yes, of course. What I can tell you, without you at least confirming genuine interest, is that the project will start at the beginning of next year. In the meantime, after you have finished your studies, of course, you will receive specialised training and take part in a training workshop created specifically for this task. Still not believing what he just heard, Frederick tries to keep his demeanour professional. That sounds wonderful. Do you have the contract with you, or will I get to read it another time? Seeing through the facade, Mr. Morgan grins slightly. And why would I make you come here twice? Now that would be unnecessary. I will have a contract printed and brought to you. Using his hologlass, Mr. Morgan looks at Frederick's open source one and winks at him playfully as he enters something into his. Are you sure that you don't want to ask me any more questions? I mean, we only talked for a few minutes, and you are already offering me to sign a contract for such a position. It just seems unusual to me. Frederick asks Mr. Morgan, still surprised by the whole situation. Yes, of course. Like I already told you at the beginning, the boring formal stuff has already been reviewed by my colleagues. The days for evaluating whether or not you are of interest to our company, personality-wise. Good grades don't necessarily make a good engineer, for example, Mr. Morgan explains to him, with his trademark neutral smile. A few moments later, an obelisk spot with purple lights enters the room, stopping next to Frederick. As he looks at the robot, a hatch opens and reveals a few printed pages of paper, his contract. Frederick grabs them and starts reading through it. The robot turns around and leaves the room without making a single noise. After a few minutes of careful reading, Frederick looks up at his interviewer. This is beyond my expectations. I accept your offer. He grabs his sling bag and takes out a silvered fountain pen to sign his contract. Oh, you brought your own. Interesting. Oftentimes I have to lend applicants my own due to them not having one on their person, Mr. Morgan observes. Like I said, I did my research, and I found out that this company likes to keep it the old-fashioned way. That's why I brought one with me. Ah, I see. Well, that takes care of things. Mr. Morgan takes the signed contract with a smile and extends his right hand for Frederick. Congratulations, Mr. McLeroy. Welcome to Helios. I am looking forward to working with you. Shaking his hand, Frederick replies, Good cooperation.